Morning or good afternoon, I guess, everybody. I hope everybody's staying warm out there. Um, when we conduct workshops on strengthening partnerships, we have generally started by asking each individual to think about a great partnership that they have been involved in their past and what made it so great. So give that some thought while I kind of share some of what has been said in the past when we've asked that question. What many people have said that the partnership worked because of the leadership and their organization. Agendas and materials and planning was done well in advance, so people knew what to expect. Another has said that there was constant communication among the partners. So when somebody missed a meeting, they would receive the information of what occurred at that meeting within the next couple of days. So there was quick response time if you had not been able to attend a meeting. Now, we even had one person mention that their marriage was the best partnership they have ever had, which I love because, I mean, think of how their spouse feels. But anyway, because there was trust and a commitment to working on problems together. So going with that, taking equal responsibility for the problem and solution. Now, wow, that's fantastic that they realize that. But also, those issues arise with every kind of partnership, and sharing responsibility for the problem and the solution pertains to all types of partnerships. So with that in mind, let's discuss the value of partnerships for programs of study and how we might address building or strengthening our partnerships. Now the next slide talks about why partnerships. We know that there's no mystery as to why partnerships are foundational to the development and implementation of programs of study. We all want to make sure our students can transition smoothly from secondary to post-secondary educational experiences. We know that we want them to receive the support they need to be successful, i.e. the instruction is definitely student-centered. We know we want curriculum to be aligned so we don't have a lot of duplication between levels of education. We want data to be shared and used to identify our successes and our needs for improvement. And last but definitely not least, we need to have our business and industry representatives at the table having a role in working with our work-based learning experiences and developing and letting us know what is up to date in that given industry. Now, you might recall the 6 principles behind the development of programs of study that were published by Deb Bragg and the Office of Community College Research and Leadership in 2006. But that first principle identifies the very foundation of what needs to occur as we start envisioning a new program, which many of you are doing with STEM Program of Study implementation. There needs to be definite leadership, organization, and support from the top. And part of that very first element, is that programs of study are developed and supported by collaborative partners. Finally, if you've worked in career and technical education for any length of time or are knowledgeable of it, you probably know that partnerships have been identified for years as a key component to programs of study through the Carl Perkins legislation. Going on to the next slide, we know that there is a first planning step for a partnership, and in many instances, or in most instances, I would say 1 or 2 people may envision this before others. And a first planning step is before we start going out and collaborating and recruiting membership in a partnership, we really need to know what we want to accomplish through a partnership. More resources are rarely the answer. Oftentimes getting rich ideas from as many at the table and leading into rich discussion and solutions is really what comes to solve any kind of challenges or develop any kind of programs that we need. So to quote Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. Think about why we're going to have a partnership and what purposes it's going to serve and what outcomes we want it to fill. The next slide you're seeing is a manufacturing kind of career cluster prototype of a template, and many of you probably have seen this on the Illinois Pathway Initiative website. But particularly when we are discussing STEM programs of study, we want to make sure we have the right partners at the table. And when we talk about this, as I said in our workshops about partnerships, we discuss partnerships around a given cluster. And we really envision from looking at a picture like this, who should be at the table. So today, as you're looking at this, think about movement from orientation or middle and early high school all the way through to post-secondary education, and think about the experiences a student might have and who all needs to be at the table to really discuss their needs and their curriculum content. Now think about it also, if you would, in a traditional sense, but also in a non-traditional sense. We have a lot of students who take multiple exits and multiple entry points as they pursue their educational experiences. So thinking about being student-centered and really providing for all needs of the students really needs to be at the heart of who you have sitting at the partnership for a given cluster. The next slide really kind of highlights the different clusters, or the different, partners that need to be represented regardless of what cluster we're talking about. Again, the representation needs to reflect the perspectives of those impacted by and those who impact the success of the student. Now, another key resource here, our learning exchanges that many of you are aware of can be represented here, and they would be very good consultants to help you identify maybe some business and industry representatives in your geographic area of the state for a given industry. Finally, we're going to get into 6 steps that we feel really contribute to developing a fruitful and valuable partnership. We have talked about the first 2 already a little bit. As we said, we always know that there's always someone who first envisions the need for a partnership. Before promoting or proposing a partnership, we need to have a reason and a purpose for that partnership. So the next slide really talks about those steps and what we need to do to develop that partnership. Before we go into identifying our partners, as we said during our last discussion, the partners really need to be identified based upon what we're attempting to accomplish. And commitment is key to an ongoing relationship from those partners. When we get into identifying partners, we've already discussed that we need to make sure the students and the cluster or industry are represented at the table. We need to establish a working team of partners who can be the legs of the partnership and move activity forward. And we need to build that partnership to include feeders as well as recipients of the students we serve. The third step is defining the governance structure. And as you all know, because you've all been involved in some way, shape, or form in a partnership, this includes role definition. What roles will each partner play in that partnership? How will the partnership interact with other structures? What other partnerships or councils will have an impact on the activities of a given partnership? Will you need to have an executive committee? What officers might be needed? And how long will they need to serve? There always needs to be some flexibility. Partners may need to come in and out, or you may need to form ad hoc committees for short-term issues. So always identify the ideal governance structure, but think about how you can maintain that flexibility so you're effective and efficient in your work. The fourth is operating the partnership. And I guess what I always say with this one is communicate, 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 because from what we've seen and what we've read, lack of communication can be the #1 killer of partnerships. We need to plan and develop clear agendas and meeting objectives and disseminate information prior to each meeting for discussion and analysis at the meeting. And of course, we need to establish ground rules for our operation, and we need to stick to them. Finally, we get into evaluating the partnership. You remember when we were talking about beginning with the end in mind, the Stephen Covey quote, when we established the goals at the onset, At this point, we need to reflect and review those goals and see how we're doing in meeting those goals. And it's always encouraged to, at least once a year, look at what is working, what needs improvement. Do we have anybody that's not represented on our partnership that we need to engage, and how do we engage them or maybe re-engage them? Finally, sustainability in the partnership. Sustaining the partnership basically relies on establishing a written document of some sort. Now, they can be as formal or as informal as you feel the need in your specific area. But that document can really cement the commitment of all of your partners by having a charter that states what you agree to do and what responsibilities and roles you are going to take in improving and developing good, solid STEM programs of study. So as we go into the 7 components of an effective partnership, think about these components. Look at those and just take a second and see which ones really resonate and which ones kind of are, aha, I've been through this, I know that these are critical components. Which one really resonates? You know, there are certain items that I feel are critical just because of my experiences. But all of these are important. The written agreement continues to be a huge issue, number 3 on your list. We really encourage people to ceremonialize that commitment and make it a celebration. Through experiences we've had with Pathways to Results, a program development and improvement process, we've seen that that charter or that memorandum of understanding really brings people back to the goals that they really sat down to address in the very beginning. And it is a time to celebrate when everyone signs on. As I said earlier, lack of communication is a big killer of partnerships because people can become disengaged, and if there's no regular communication, they don't feel important. They really need to have that communication that is regular and rich. And the other is restructuring may be needed as changing strengths of individual partners occur and so forth. Don't sweat it. Restructuring is fine. And realizing the need to restructure is a positive step for a valuable partnership. Also, planning for the ceasing or the elimination or changing of the partnership is not a bad thing. Doesn't mean the partnership wasn't successful. It may just mean that the initial goals have been met and something different may need attention. So just remember to not hang on too long for an ineffective partnership. Think about restructuring. Think about establishing new goals and direction. Remember, the right people for the right reason for the right time. That's a key phrase to let you know that it's effective and the timing is key. Finally, we have some resources that are available for all of you on partnerships. We have a Strengthening Partnerships Pathway to Results supplement that is highly recommended. It is on our Resource Center website, and there's a picture of it on your screen. The Office of Community College Research and Leadership, you see their actual website there. The Pathway Resource Center website, and I mentioned earlier the Illinois Pathways Initiative website, which will give you some different templates and so forth, and ideas for building the curriculum templates for your programs of study. With that, I think I'm going to turn it back to Joel and see if we have any questions or comments that you all would like to be made. But finally, I'd like to express the value of partnerships can't be overstated, especially in this program of study implementation. With the right entities represented and the right people at the table, your partnerships have the potential to address a variety of issues. Alignment within and between institutions, program improvements, curriculum and instructional change, academic and student service support, and shared resources and sustainability, just to name a few. So remember that credibility for changes and for improvements can always be gained through rich discussion and ownership by many. With that, Joel,